We are excited to be able to share some information with you regarding our plans for next fall, and want to take the opportunity to walk through, obviously, what has transpired in the last several months from our transition from being in the classroom to being fully a cloud learning experience. And then as we contemplate a return to school in August, what that might look like. So I am joined tonight by members of the teaching and learning team, including Amy Quinn, our math and science coordinator, Gianna Taylor, our ELA, MTSS, and school improvement coordinator, and Catherine Law, our instructional technology, school testing coordinator, and social studies coordinator. So we have the three who are joining us tonight to be able to present as well. So we're excited about that. Dan, if you could move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So actually, as you mentioned, President Brickman, we have already established a partnership with the members of our community within the school district to begin to think about what this might look like. And this is the district learning design team. And so the purpose of the district learning design really started 2 years ago when we began work around the portrait of a graduate and really beginning to define what the 4 C's meant and what we wanted for all students who graduate from West Bloomfield High School. And then quickly, in mid-March or really early March, we asked that team to pivot from really working around the portrait of a graduate to cloud learning. And in just really 3 short hours on March the 11th, this amazing team was able to take what we've been delivering in person in classroom and develop what has now become our cloud learning platform. They helped plan the implementation. They helped define those components that we wanted for all students. They talked about community engagement. We talked about parent communication. We figured out how to distribute technology, and it really is an amazing team. And now we've asked them to pivot again, and in fact have expanded the team. So now we're thinking not only about cloud learning and completing the rest of this school year, but obviously what next fall might look like. And that is what has led to the classroom to cloud framework for learning. The members of the team are listed below, and as you can see, it's a number of people, of stakeholders from across the district. This incredible group of educators represents teachers from every level. It has board members, central office leaders, building leaders. It ranges from special education, specialized programs, to general education classroom teachers from kindergarten through 12th grade. So this is a wide variety of teachers and experiences who are all playing a large part in leading this work. So I have to thank all of them because of the hours they're still giving every other week for at least 2 hours we're meeting, and then just their thoughtful approach and progressive thinking as we begin planning for the next school year. I'm ready, Dan. Or not. So, oops, we jumped ahead a few. It's very tricky. So while he's moving to the next one, I'll start talking. There we go. We wanted to make sure that we had some highlights from this spring as well. This is a great tool that Gianna actually found that pulls the Twitter hashtags that appear most often associated with West Bloomfield. So you can see the amazing work that our teachers have been doing all spring. So whether that is the senior spotlight things that are happening, examples of a social contract, talking about small groups that are occurring around geometry instruction, students in a Zoom where they're showing their work to their teacher, and obviously what our home learning environments have all become. No matter what we've given to teachers or asked teachers to do, they've risen to the challenge. And so we expect that this will be very much the same as we begin to think about what the fall is. And so we're continued to be so fortunate to have such high quality teachers and staff in this district who are willing to do what's best for kids, even if that means that they have to completely reimagine what they've known and done for years and years. I'm ready, Dan. Thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Gianna now, who's going to talk a little bit about our Classroom to Cloud instructional roadmap.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Dan, the image in that is hyperlinked. So I'm wondering if you could click on that and go to the document. And if you can't, it's okay. I have it pulled up. So there we go. Okay, so as we've been planning and the district learning design team has been planning, we're really thinking about what 3 different scenarios might look like in the fall, because going back to school as normal probably is not an option at this point. So we want to be prepared for whatever will come our way. So our first roadmap is what we would consider a blended option. So this would be part of the time in person and part of the time remote. And that's actually the most complicated and complex scenario to work out, because there are so many things that we have to think about. We first need to determine an instructional model. So what will that look like when teachers are teaching part of the time in person and part of the time remotely? We have to enact all of the safety protocols based on the CDC guidelines, which is very complex, and there are a lot of moving pieces to that. We need to create building schedules, and all of our principals have been working to create what they think would be workable building schedules. We have to develop options for childcare and camps, because we know that on the days that students are learning remotely, many of their parents are going to be at work. So we have to have some options for them so that their kids can go someplace that is safe and is still following all of those guidelines. We'll talk about those a little bit later in the presentation. Pretty soon, we're going to be sending out some stakeholder surveys to gauge family interest, because we need to know what families are thinking about what they're going to do in the fall. Because as I'll talk about in a second, we might have some families who choose remote only options regardless of kind of what state we're in as a state. And so they might choose to just feel better if they're only remote. And with all of our options, we have to provide PD to our teachers around our instructional model, technology tools, beefing that up. And we're also looking at the potential of a new learning management system to replace Google Classroom that is a little bit more robust and integrates everything we want into one hub so that people aren't going all over the place. A second plan would be Plan B. And so that would be a remote only option if we were in some kind of stay-at-home order again in the fall. And so that has many of the same needs and considerations, but we would have to change our building schedules because everyone would be remote. And so we'd need to think about what that would look like. And Plan C is for families that we know who will not feel comfortable coming back in person at all in the fall. And so we can't afford to lose those students, and we don't want to lose them. We still want to be able to provide them a West Bloomfield education. So we'll need to think about what that will look like and have a ballpark number pretty soon, because that kind of thing affects staffing, like what teachers will teach remotely. And so we'll need to think about what that looks like as well.
Deanna, you're muted.
Sorry, I unmuted myself, then I did. Sorry, so we can move on to the next slide, please. I know I'm getting a little bit of a delay. He's actually ahead and I'm slow. So the next portion we're going to talk about is, Catherine, I believe you're up, correct? There you go.
It's me. All right, considering our instructional roadmap that Gianna just showed us with the different scenarios, we need to make sure that staff members are prepared. What you see here is a roadmap for personalized, competency-based professional development for staff. We have important standards to adhere to. Among those are teacher choice and voice regarding skill and strategies that they feel they need to work on to be successful in a blended learning environment in the fall. Teachers can work at their own pace and get real-time support from teaching and learning members. You can see the boxes there. We have 4 competency modules that we need teachers to complete for their professional development. The first one is the instructional model. We would like to introduce personalized, competency-based learning in a blended learning environment. The second one is instructional technology, including a new learning management system, but also a variety of technology options for teachers to choose from based on their interests and need. The third one is social emotional learning strategies for teachers of all grade levels. And the fourth one is content-specific skills based on grade band or content area. And again, we just sent out a teacher survey to capture teacher voice regarding what skills in their content areas they feel they need to be successful. And after working on those modules and developing competency in all of them, they will then work towards the intended outcome, which is a personalized opportunity to demonstrate learning through the creation of their own unit, demonstrating the skills and strategies learned in the 4 competency modules. So we are trying to model for teachers how we want units to be developed in a competency-based, personalized element with choice and voice and being able to work at their own pacing.
Thank you. And so, just as we know, as we move to the next slide, it is what we're working on in conjunction with the teachers. So, as Catherine mentioned, we did send a survey just before the meeting started, actually, where we're seeking feedback from teachers about both their needs around professional learning this summer, and then in order to continue on successfully in the fall, and then obviously kind of their preferences as we think about returning to school and what makes the most sense for them. We want to share with you our Classroom to Cloud instructional roadmap for option A. And so I want to preface this, that when I use things like 50% of your students, that is not set in stone. That certainly this is flexible, and we will need to be responsive to whatever direction we get, whether that's from the governor's office, the Michigan Department of Education, the World Health Organization, anything from the federal government as well. So this is where we are at this point in time. And most importantly, we don't want to leave this school year and end this school year without a solid plan in place. And so what we envision in this blended learning model is that Mondays and Tuesdays, there would be in-person instruction for approximately 50% of the students. And the other 50% of the students were participating in remote learning. This allows us to socially distance responsibly and be able to do exactly what meet those protocols at this point in time. Wednesdays would be remote learning for all students. And I'll talk about why here in a minute. And then Thursdays and Fridays would be in-person instruction for approximately 50% of students, and the other would be at home, other 50% at home learning. And they're just flipped. So if you attend Monday and Tuesday, you would then learn from home on Thursday and Friday, and then vice versa. We felt very strongly about Wednesdays being a remote learning day for all students across the district and for teachers, so that we're able to effectively clean and disinfect the schools. The purpose of having social distancing in smaller groups is the ability to mitigate the number of potential exposures they have, and so that they have a very self-contained group of students that they travel with throughout the day, and are protected, so that they aren't continuing to be exposed to numbers and numbers of students. And so by having Monday and Tuesday, the same group of students attend, Wednesday being remote learning, we're able to come in and do a deep clean in all of our buildings, and so that they are ready for the next group of students who would not have entered the school at that point in time. Additionally, we feel as if it is a good day in this model for teachers to be able to continue to do their professional work, and for students to be able to work at home and keep up with their coursework without it being the same strenuous of 5 days and trying to keep up with an alternating rotation as we go. So we are looking at Mondays and Tuesdays with 50% in attendance, Wednesday remote learning for everyone, Thursday and Friday the other 50%. This does allow us to socially distance, allows us to manage transitions during passing time in the hallways. It allows us to manage transportation as we talk about some of those things coming up. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. Other considerations that we are having discussions. We know that there were students who left our schools on March the 13th, our last full day of in-person instruction, actually March the 12th, who had gaps in their learning. And by all means, they've done an excellent job, and our teachers have done an outstanding job continuing to provide new instruction to our students. But we would be foolish to believe that those gaps still don't exist, or in fact that some of those gaps actually widened. So we know there are students who need additional instructional opportunities. And what this might look like is that they would come to school for a third in-person instructional day. That does not mean that we would place them back into their general education setting, but in fact, they might have a full day with either an interventionist, like a reading consultant, that they would have additional time if they were in a resource room for special education. They would have opportunities to interact with their speech pathologist, with their social worker, with any other ancillary staff that might provide support. And so we are trying to begin to think about what that more looks like for those kids who have demonstrated need instructionally, and how we might best meet the needs of those kids. And then obviously we have our self-contained programs, special education programs, like our ASD classrooms, our emotionally impaired in classrooms, our cognitively impaired classrooms. And those programs, because they have a smaller number of students, would have the opportunity to meet 4 days per week. And so our students with sometimes the most need and most instructional needs would have the opportunity to continue with live in-person instruction 4 days per week. Again, I want to preface this with these things are our roadmap. No differently than when we are taking a trip, or you're taking a trip and you start on one direction and suddenly Siri reroutes you, or your GPS reroutes you. That could certainly happen here. But this is going to serve as our guide as we move forward and we begin to think about what this might look like in a blended learning opportunity. At this time, Amy Quinn is going to talk to us a little bit about our technology needs.
All right, so as part of the Classroom to Cloud framework, we're looking at student and staff technology needs, ideas on how we can best support high quality remote learning. And this would mean gathering some information of additional Chromebooks that are needed, investigating a possible tablet option for K-1, really thinking about their needs as early learners, additional Wi-Fi hotspots to ensure accessibility. And we will continue to identify relevant engaging tools like Padlet, Flipgrid, and Zoom. So we want to identify tools that support best practices and also work side by side with teachers in technology that supports their content area. Google Classroom has been great to get us started with virtual learning. And now we're kind of needing that next step or a more robust system. So I'm sure maybe you've heard we had an amazing turnout today. We had our Canvas sandbox sessions. There were 2 sessions. It was a time for teachers to just kind of play around, take a look around, learn about Canvas. So we had about 75 teachers per session from K-12. And we actually went through a module or a playlist to learn more about Canvas. And as we were learning, we were able to see the features that this LMS had to offer. Teachers were excited, especially with the ease of use, the seamless integration of Google Classroom, Zoom, Google Slides, videos, being able to use rubrics, and especially the different ways that teachers can provide feedback to students. So Canvas is a top integrator with Google Chrome and PowerSchool. The district learning design team, at our last meeting, we had teachers K-12 write down what features they would want in an LMS system, and everything on that list we saw. And also, we know that we need to provide professional learning opportunities for staff on relevant instructional technology tools. And this is a part of our professional development plan, as Catherine has shared.
Perfect, thank you. So moving on into our planning. So you've heard a little bit about our instructional design, you've heard about our professional development plan, you've heard about our technology needs and our planning going forward with technology. Obviously, a need for our parents within the community is to have childcare options for those days that we would be in blended instruction. And so we, Eric Whitney and myself, met with Laura Poxon, our Director of Early Childhood and Kids Club Programming, and Joey Spano, our Community Service Director, to start to think about what that might look like. And so this is the framework that they developed that would provide childcare options for our families here in the district. So this program right now would be located at Olms because it has ample space, and we would be able to segregate those classrooms into the second floor based upon need. We have some survey work to do around those kinds of things. The kids club that would be there would provide care from 6:45 a.m. to 6:30, no differently than a typical child care day. If you were in regular kids club, so you needed someone who needed before or after care, and it was your day to attend school in-person instruction, you would go to kids club at your normal school. But on the days that you didn't have in-person instruction, we would go to Olms. And so what I think is particularly important to us is that this was not an attempt and would not ever be something where we would make money based on this program, but really we are looking to make sure that we can cover our programming costs. We want to provide a service to our families. We recognize that at this point in time financially, it is a difficult time for many of our families and uncertain as we look at an ongoing work situation and budgets from across the country really. And so we want to make sure that we can offer this service at a reasonable cost to our families. So both Joey and Laura are working with Kyle and Eric and myself to develop what that cost structure might indeed look like. The next slide really talks about what a sample day might be when the students were with us in our kids club. So they would certainly have time for free time and those sorts of things. They would have time allocated for cloud learning, for their remote learning lessons. So for instance, if someone was learning from home that day and they were at Olms for Kids Club, they would have at least 2 hours in the morning and the same amount of time roughly in the afternoon to get online and complete their schoolwork. They would have lunch, they would have some physical activity time, they would have some games, they'd have all those sorts of things. So I really want to give kudos to both Joey and to Laura for immediately kind of grasping this and saying, hey, when we walked in the door, you probably hadn't thought about what childcare was going to look like, or even that we were going to offer childcare, but we need to be able to provide that service for our families. And so this is what they've already developed, and they continue to refine as we go through this process. We will be surveying our families, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But certainly one of those most important questions will be, what do you need as we go forward and think about the return to school in the fall around childcare. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is another kind of kudos to the cabinet members that I'm lucky enough to serve with every day. Both Kyle, Eric, Jerry, and myself have begun to work with our Return to School task force around classroom to cloud. So last week we held our first meeting with food service, with transportation, with facilities, with our custodial representatives, and certainly us, to begin to think about those other pieces of this. You've heard a lot about instruction. You've heard around services around providing childcare. Equally important to both our families and to our staff is that we have a very well thought out, well designed, coherent plan about safety when students return. That includes things like screening for symptoms when staff and students come into our buildings. What are our policies and procedures around visitors? How are we going to provide that personal protective equipment that we might need? So that's masks, that's hand sanitizer. How are we going to make sure that our buildings are clean and that everything has a sanitizing schedule so that students aren't exposed more than what they need to be? We need to talk about what lunch and breakfast service will look like next year. The days right now, based on the world that we're living in, to walk in and to the cafeteria and go through a serving line and choose what you want or have it put on a plate and then sit in a large environment probably are not going to happen. So how do we plan for grab and go meals in order to make our food service careful as possible? And transportation has already begun to work with schools from across Oakland County. And Lynn was great last week in our meeting thinking about how do we socially distance on a bus? What does that look like? When we have a student who shows symptoms and indeed may have a fever or other symptoms, who is going to sit with that student? What's our communication plan? What are those next steps with tracing where that student has been and who they've interacted with? We have worked with secure education consultants last winter to begin to look at security within the buildings. They have developed a protocol and policies and checklists that buildings are using or districts are able to use to really further those policy and procedure discussions and those safe return to work expectations. And so we met last week to start and to begin to define what those next steps need to be. The same would be true as we begin to look at this week. We have another meeting scheduled. We'll meet at least weekly going forward until it's time to go back to school in August. So it's comprehensive in the sense that we're having a variety of conversations to make sure that student safety, staff safety, and parents can feel comfortable sending their students back to school, and that we have those policies and procedures that guide everything that we do in the district, that we have those policies and procedures in line and that everybody understands and feels comfortable going forward. On the next slide, as we move forward and think about what we might be doing. Those are the return to school roadmap, and you'll see that the graphic that we have on the side is really just a continuation of the first graphic, that Deanna shared around classroom to cloud and the roadmaps. There's a piece that we didn't show tonight, but we're continuing to define around the professional development plan. And then this is the last one, just to show you all the things that have to be taken into consideration as we develop these return to school plans. So you've heard from technology. You've talked about our instructional priorities. We've talked about professional learning, our stakeholder communications coming up next, facilities and operations, policies, health and wellness, and then obviously talent and development and management as we think about making sure that we have staff in the correct places, we've addressed their concerns, and that parents and that staff members that may have health concerns also have their needs addressed as well. The next slide, a little bit, finally addresses, as we get there, sorry, thank you, our communication plan. And I want to just give you a quick update. The Teaching and Learning Department has been doing basically weekly staff updates, sometimes more. I think I've had maybe a week since we started Cloud Learning where we didn't put out a weekly staff update just around the things that are going on with the district learning design team, how this framework has begun to take shape, things they need to know about schedule, all those sorts of things. So we've had weekly staff updates. Dan has done an excellent job with our weekly parent updates. It looks fantastic, and it continues to bring their voice into the table and to showcase the things that we're doing across the district. We have had staff informational sessions around our classroom to cloud plan. We had one Tuesday last week that had about 50 people in attendance. We had one Thursday, because I think what happened after Tuesday was the word got out that you probably wanted to come and listen. So we had about 150 people at the meeting on the 14th. Yesterday, last evening, we had one. We had about 100 people on the call. And today we did one right before the board meeting, and we had about another 100 people. So we believe that we've touched many of our staff members across the district. So they have a pretty good awareness, in fact, a pretty in-depth awareness about what this plan looks like. And they had the opportunity to ask questions and to provide us feedback as well. We had a staff survey that went out today, asking about professional development needs and also about their feelings about returning to school. You know, when we have the opportunity to offer remote learning only as an option, we know that we have staff members who are either compromised themselves, that they have a family member or someone who maybe they come into close contact regularly with who is compromised, or quite frankly are fearful about returning to school at this point in time. So one of the questions that went on the survey out to our staff today is, what's your level of comfort and your preference as we think about returning to school in the fall? So we can identify those staff members who may indeed want to be to continue remotely and to provide instruction that way to our students as we move forward. We conducted a student survey last week of our rising 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, so current 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. We did not ask our seniors because they're done, and they were in the middle of APs. And so we really looked at students that will be at West Bloomfield High School next year about their experience with cloud learning thus far, and then really thinking about a little of a stop, start, continue. What's gone well? What are those things that we should continue to think about for next year? And what are those things that we need to stop doing? And within that student survey, they indicated their interest and willingness to be a part of a student focus group. And that student focus group is set to meet next Wednesday, May 27th. We will provide to them this copy of our Classroom to Cloud framework with some explanation. We have some set questions we want them to think about before we meet with them in small groups via Zoom on next Wednesday. So we'll bring those results back as well, because we know that student voice is very important, and we're interested in their thoughts as we plan more in depth what this instruction is going to look like. And then we have parent and community information sessions scheduled for this week. The first one is Thursday evening at 7 p.m. The second one is Friday morning at 10 a.m. We sent links today, so Dan put it on all of our social media. It also went out via school messenger today. It is a webinar, so parents and community members are encouraged to log in to hear the presentation that'll be given by members of the teaching and learning team and myself, and then they'll have opportunity to have a Q&A session, the way we've done it in all of our meetings, where they post them into the chat or into the Q&A. We monitor that and answer those questions as we go. So we've really tried to establish opportunities for us to send our message and to share our plan, but also to get back that two-way communication. So how are they able to communicate back to us, and so that we can take into account the things that worry them and that maybe perhaps we've not yet thought about. And then on the last slide, this is a quote by Adam Grant, who is a West Bloomfield High School graduate. And if you don't follow him on Twitter, I suggest that you do. He puts out some great stuff. And it says, productivity propaganda promotes quantity at the expense of quality and work at the expense of health. Effort isn't a badge of honor. It's a path to meaningful goals. Like the tortoise that beats the hare, in the long run, we make more progress if we stop to rest and recover along the way. And we shared this in each of our staff presentations in the last few days, thinking about stepping away at the end of the school year, taking a break, really giving themselves time to regroup and not sit in front of their device for hours on end, and to get outside and enjoy different time with their families, or actually just to return to normalcy to some degree as things begin to open up across the state. But also that when we return and we begin to think about professional development and their professional learning, that we want to know what those goals are, hence the need for a survey. Where do they want to be, and how can we help them get there so that the path is direct and not meandering and meets their needs? And the same would be true for our students. When students know what that end goal is and they know how to get there, then they feel that they are confident and that they can rise to that challenge. And so we want our staff to know how much we appreciate them and the work they've done this year. We want to make sure they understand that we have clear goals and we want to be responsive to their needs. And the same would be true of our students. It has been an unusual spring, to say the least. And so as we look forward and think about what next school year might bring, we wanted to make sure the board was aware of our plans. And then finally, before I'm quiet and take any questions, I want to say thank you, a huge thank you to Catherine, to Amy, and to Gianna. These three spend so much time along with the other members of teaching and learning, but particularly these three. We Zoom, I don't know, about 1 million times a week, I think. It blends in. We Zoom just about every weekend for at least a few hours. I think one weekend we spent about 7 hours together over the course of Saturday and Sunday, working and planning and really being thoughtful about what this is going to look like next year. And so I have to say, I don't know what I do without them and the rest of the teaching and learning team who really have given a lot of their time to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students in West Bloomfield.
Thank you, Ms. Barash. I'm going to open this up. So I'm going to first, if I can just say this to Ms. Sacco and Ms. Beatty, since we're on the district learning design team, if we let the other board members have some questions, because this is probably the first time they've seen this presentation, if we can let them go first and then we can follow up at the end. Is that okay? Okay, Christina, you can go first.
Wow, thank you guys. That was really a very comprehensive and a very, very well thought plan, considering what we're going through right now. One of the questions I had, I guess, would be more for Ms. Quinn. You had mentioned, some devices, maybe adding some tablets, hotspots, things like that. Is that something that you guys are going to plan on sooner than later? Do you have a timeline as to when you guys might start looking at that?
Deanna, do you want to answer that one? I know.
Sure.
Or Deanna, it doesn't matter. Sorry.
I know you're tired of hearing from me. I understand. It's okay. We have already been in contact. So earlier this spring, actually, we purchased or we're in the queue for an additional 180 Chromebooks. So those have already been purchased and are moving through with bond dollars, because that's part of the refresh anyway, the normal refresh. So Kyle helped us to execute that, as well as our technology. We know that we have devices that we have distributed. I'm going to say that we probably have distributed to our families, not counting those who already had our devices at home. I think we've distributed north of 900 devices since we've gone to cloud learning. And so we know that sometimes they have the end of useful life. They do have an end of useful life, and many of them are meeting that. So we did do a survey of our families last week asking about their needs for devices, and are they currently using one of our devices, and if so, is it meeting their needs, et cetera. And so we are going to use that data to drive our next round of purchases so that we have a good plan. We are going to do a little bit of study around a tablet for lower L, particularly K1, and whether that might be a better option as we move forward if we had to be in a blended environment in the fall. So those conversations have already started.
Okay, good. I guess I bring that point up because of the company I work for. I know that there's starting to be, there has been kind of a shortage on tablets, hotspots. We're even finding now like tablets for little kids that are more, kind of ruggedized. Mm-hmm. So I guess my comment would be just don't wait too long on that, because everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's trying to get it. And I know it's very tough right now. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Carol, you were next. You're on mute.
I know. I was trying to get myself down to that little button and unmute myself. First, I'm not sure when you people sleep. Because the amount of time that clearly has gone into all of this is truly mind-boggling to me, and I want to congratulate you and thank you for your whole team for this incredible work. I think it's wonderful, given the fact that there is such uncertainty as to what the fall will look like. So I mean, my one question though comes back to doing the opposite day daycare, kids club, whatever you're going to call it, at OMS. And are you expecting, or what sort of parent feedback have you gotten about the families that live on the north end going to Olms, is that a concern for them? Should we be looking at other options, or will that meet their needs?
That we don't know yet, Carol. So you never know whether I'm muted or unmuted. The parent survey is going to go out after the forum on Thursday evening and on Friday. But we will add that question because you're right, that could certainly be something. The reason why we selected Olms is obviously it has room. And so we would be able to contain that learning environment as well. So we will certainly seek parent feedback. And I know both Laura and Joey are open to being responsive to the needs of our community. So we will add that as a survey question that will go out after we meet later this week.
Okay, and then one other follow-up question sort of on that same order is when you have, let's say that I was a family that had kids in a couple of different schools because of their grade level. How will you work it out so that this family isn't running around saying, okay, this kid's going here this day, going here this day? Can we get it so that those same kids go to kids club, especially if it's at Olms on the same day? And I know that's going to be a lot of extra effort, but is that something that you've given any thought to, how you might manage that?
Yeah, our principals have been working hours and hours too. They too don't sleep. So when we emerge from this, we're going to look 10 years older and bedraggled, but that's okay. We would have to that becomes a hand scheduling. So that's, in the old days when I was an elementary principal, we used to schedule parent-teacher conferences with siblings first, right? So we made sure that if we had parent-teacher conferences on Tuesday, that they had to identify the siblings so that they didn't have to come to 2 different nights. I really see that being the same. If we have siblings, then we want to make sure that we identify all of them, usually through Power School, and then we would schedule them accordingly. Because I would agree with you. We don't want parents who have split, 2 that come on Monday, Tuesday, and 1 that comes on Thursday, Friday. So it's going to take some effort, but it is definitely doable.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, is there Ken? Nick? Which one?
Yeah, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the team that was coming up the C2C initiative because, as I can speak for, all board members and probably admin and just teachers in general, that, the parents are just knocking down our doors virtually to see what's going on in the fall. And, the fact that, this team has come up with, obviously multiple scenarios and really meeting the needs of all students and all family styles, offering different options, it takes a lot of work. And as you've attested to, Deanna, is this how much time and effort it puts into this outside of the regular, work day. So I just wanted to say how much I appreciate all of that, and I appreciate all of you. And I'm sure that we'll have great attendance in the upcoming parent sessions as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Nick?
Yeah, I'll tell you, I can see a bunch of people putting in a lot of time, very time consuming, thought out, and just very, very much, we all appreciate this because we're getting ahead of the curve in trying to answer questions before people panic or they just want to know what's going to happen. And I'll tell you, that gives new meaning to the acronym PIA, proactive, informative, and amazing, because that's exactly what it was. And I'm proud to be affiliated with you. I don't take credit for what you've done because there's a group of you that put in a tremendous amount of time, and we all very much appreciate that. I do have one very small comment, is I know Wednesday schools will be closed so they can do their cleaning, etc. And that makes a lot of sense. How does this affect the contracts we have with food services and transportation? Are we obligated to pay those, or can we take that savings and buy extra necessary things that we need?
I'm going to let Kyle address that. Food service would continue, obviously, because we have families no differently, in my opinion, no differently than what we have now with pickups at Roosevelt and Olms. And so I would see that food service in that sense would continue the way it has been since we've been closed. But I don't know, Kyle, if you want to talk about the other piece.
Yeah, Mr. Hirsch, that's a really good question. We are exploring what kind of flexibility we have in those contracts. We think that we do. And so I don't actually have definite answer for you, but we are looking into it. That's part of our work in the task force that Deanna mentioned that we're meeting every week.
because perhaps we can take some of that savings and buy more Chromebooks or tablets and just, or are we obligated? That's all. Just look into it.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Julie, did you want to add anything? Ms. Beatty?
Yeah, it's just unmuting. I just, want to add to thanking our staff for the innovation and being so, forward thinking from the very beginning, and now the hard work and pulling in so many people to make sure that everybody is well represented in these discussions, and how just very well thought out and intentional this whole process has been. It's been a pleasure to be a part of, and just want to add my appreciation for all the hard work. It's just not the hard work, it's just, as I said, just being so on this and forward thinking and realizing what needed to be done and doing it. It's very impressive. Not only, sometimes people know what needs to be done, it's really hard being that doer versus the thinker. And so it's fantastic to see that we have, staff that's capable, more than capable of doing both. So thank you.
Ms. Aqua?
I am unmuted. Yes, in addition to everything the board members have said, being on this committee and just being, especially with the challenges that this committee's taken and turned into multiple opportunities to really get education and learning to our students while supporting the teachers that are doing it. Between the coordinators and the staff on that committee, really, I'm just in awe as we sit there and listen to the discussions that are going on. It's just the sheer dedication. Sure, everybody is exhausted. They've got families as well and doing all of this. And this is really a team of just, it's high level team at its best. Everybody really, really working together. And there is no stone left unturned. Pouring through articles and, seeing what might work and what doesn't. And, like Stacey always says, pivoting, and if something's not going to work, then just pivoting and trying something else. So I really believe we are in really good hands, even though the future may be uncertain. There are several plans to pull from. I think we're in really, really good hands, but also would love to give a shout out to, Deanna and Eric Whitney for leading this team. And there's a lot of trust that goes into this. And truthfully, I really don't think that we would be doing what we would be doing if we have not had the years of building trust and partnership with our staff and administration and board members, knowing that we're all wanting to do what's best in the what's best interest of our families and our kids and our community. And so we've really come to this amazing place because of all the hard work that has been done, continually being done. So I know we're really in good hands. And so thank you so much for the presentation. It was amazingly comprehensive, and to see the comments from the board members, knowing that they're able to understand what has actually gone on and how it's come together. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And I'll just add, and I haven't said this publicly, but I have said it to cabinet members after the March 11th meeting, and that was when I got stuck on a boat on a cruise for over a day because they wouldn't let us in the port. So I was one of those passengers, and as I was sitting there in the port and drifting off in the Atlantic Ocean for a whole day, I started realizing, like, when we docked, I was not coming back to the same Fort Lauderdale port that I left, and things were absolutely changed the week I was gone, and the level of uncertainty and spread of the disease and the potential was a completely different story from the day that I left. So and then I got back, and then we had the district learning design team, and Deanna says, we're scrapping our whole agenda. We need to talk about this. And from that moment on, I wish that I could bottle what I experienced in that room, because we have the most dedicated educators in West Bloomfield School District, bar none. Like, there is no comparison. And to see what transpired in the drive and the camaraderie and critical thinking skills and the communicate, there's no way. I wish that anybody could have experienced. I wish everybody could have been a fly on the wall and experienced what I did, because I have to tell you, it was a stressful week for the Brickman family. And I walked out of there with tears in my eyes. For the very first time, I was like, board members can leave the building. We do not need to be there. And I have never, ever, ever felt that, hey, they don't need me. And it was a bizarre, weird feeling, but it was an amazing feeling, because the trust that was built that day, and from that day forward, and reaching out. And I'm so proud of the work of trying to get as many stakeholders at the table. I am so proud of the district, because I don't think that's something we've ever really, really, really been that good at. And I really think that that is capturing and motivating and making our educators all across our district feel really good. So I want to thank you for that. So I do have a question, and I thank you all for being here also. And thank you to the district learning design team and our new attendees to the design team, and of course our teaching and learning team, which you know how much I respect and love you. So, but this is for Jerry, because this is your cabinet here that's shining. And, you know, as many of you don't know, the board has one employee, and that's Dr. Hill. And we are policymakers. We are governance, and we are policymakers. That is our role as a district. We are always looking to the future. We always have an eye 3 to 5 years out, even though we are focusing on the fall. But our main responsibility, our core of our responsibility, is the health, safety, and wellness of our students and our staff. That's our North Star. We say it as a board all the time. Our North Star is focusing on the health, safety, and wellness of our students and our staff. So I know I heard you say that you were going to be bringing policies to the school board, but Dr. Hill, none of this will work unless our community trusts both our staff and our parents that our policies and our procedures that we implement will be followed through on. And how will we manage that?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the comments. And I would like to just express my thanks to the cabinet team, Deanna, Eric, Kyle, and Dan. They are all highly qualified and highly competent and dedicated and tireless in terms of working throughout this process. Regarding the policies, we need to be going through, and we are, and Neola, our policy advisors, are looking at things differently as well, and just seeing what do we need to tweak. We need we're asking MDE for flexibility. We're asking MDE for flexibility on seat time waivers, a whole number of things. Well, we need to look at our policies and where can we implement or install flexibility for how we're approaching our work, with still having the guidance of policy to fall back on. And so that work is a work in progress. Neola just now got back into their mode of doing some policy consulting, and we will be in contact with them. And I'm sure that all of their clients are in the same situation that we are in. But what the key element in this whole thing, and what's been said many times tonight, is the team effort. And that starts with the Board of Education working as a team with the best interests of students and staff and community in mind. That continues through the cabinet and all of the divisions and departments within our school district. But what people who have really shined through this process are the dedication of the teachers who took and just on a dime changed how they do things and are working and learning as they're teaching and as they're coping at home. And this has just been an amazing effort to be a part of. But it takes every one of us, everyone on the panel this evening, every one of the participants that are watching, all of the staff and parents and community members and students. We need to hear from all the voices, and we need to do the best job that we can possibly do in capturing the thinking of everybody. And we will be committed to doing that and getting feedback, analyzing data, analyzing the feedback, and making the tweaks where we need to, and assuring people that we have the best interests of children at heart, and we have the best interest of staff as we're working through all the work that needs to be done. And I know that board members, you have a special responsibility, because while we're doing all this, guess what's happening at the state and federal government level in terms of assistance on funding? There's a political discussion going on, like it's an option to not fund what we've been doing. And I think I will implore everybody to contact your state and federal legislator and express that resolution that we passed, that the board passed earlier this evening. And just, we cannot have a recovering economy if we cripple one of the foundations of our democracy, and that's public education. So we have to be advocates, strong advocates. We have to become political in our advocacy, and not just talk amongst ourselves. We have to reach out to our political leaders, and that goes from the President of the United States to leaders of the Senate and the House and Congress, the governor of our state, both parties, the Senate and the representatives, and all parties. This is a nonpartisan issue. And I think we just need to be assertive on how we go about that. So again, thanks for all of the work from everybody, but our work is just beginning, I believe, and we need to make sure that we keep the momentum going, and we need the support of our state and nation to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And yes, I was on a conference today with MASB, with the state budget office, and I mean, they're still predicting to take away $650 per student for this year that we've already spent, and then $650 for next year. And that's the discussions right now. So if anyone in my attendees and all of our teachers and all of the professionals in our school district and community, we really need to start being a voice for public education, because many of you I know that have kids my age remember when they took away $470 about 10, 12 years ago, and we just now got that back, and it took 10 years plus without inflation, without factoring in inflation. Schools cannot burden $650 for the next couple of years per student every year. That's $3.2 million for West Bloomfield to take out of their budget. And so it's time for advocacy on the highest level. And thank you, Jerry, for that. And the policies, will that, and I'll ask Deanna this, will policies, health and wellness policies be part of professional development?
Yes, and I would also say that that's really a lot of our work with Kyle and Eric, is to develop those protocols and screenings and procedures around visitors and all those kinds of things. If you're talking about social emotional learning, one of the pieces, which is equally, if not more important, is physical well-being. Part of the professional development we will be doing with staff is how to take care of themselves, so that mental health well-being for the staff, and additionally for the students as well. We know that they're going to return, not in the same way that they left us in March, unfortunately, many of them. And so we need to make sure that we're meeting those needs as well. So you will see, we'll begin to work on policies and procedures. And so you would see that shortly in the coming months. So it's going to be a busy summer.
Yes, it will be for all. And board members, hang on, because we will be adding some meetings throughout the summer as well. So is there anything else for board members? Mr. Whitney, would you like to say something?
I apologize, and I just want to add, though, also that we are meeting, for example, this week with our union leaders to make sure that we also understand what are their concerns for safety and wellness of their employees, what are they hearing from their members, and so we want to make sure that we keep that dialogue open as well, and we are looking forward to hearing from them about the policies and procedures that they want to see in place as well that would help our employees.
And thank you for saying that. And I'm talking a lot tonight. I don't normally, but I am. It was just Teacher Appreciation Week, and I have to do a shout out to all of the families, the kids, especially the high school kids, and all the parents, and what they did for teachers and showing their appreciation. teachers are remarkable, and what they did in such a short amount of time, I have to say, is nothing short of amazing. And it's just nothing, and I'm just so thankful that you made our teachers feel the appreciation and love from home. So they're working hard, and I thank you for that.